Welcome to the Ages of Rock podcast with your hosts, Bill Algie, Dennis Talbot, and Alan Tate. We are three guys who have one thing in common, a love of rock and roll. Our goal is to talk about all things rock. We hope you find this show intriguing, funny, and occasionally highly opinionated. Enjoy!
Hey, welcome back to the Ages of Rock podcast. This is episode number 266. We have a very special guest tonight. It's Danny Zelisko. Let's see, he's been a promoter for 40 some years.
Yeah,
50, not 50 yet though, right?
almost.
Almost.
It's 47 years since my first show a couple weeks ago.
Wow, that's a pretty cool anniversary.
Yeah, when you consider, like, this is something I have an argument with my wife about all the time about who's right and who's wrong. When you consider how many times I had to be right about booking shows to still be here after all this time, I think that gives me a little, kind of a foundation on which to stand and say, hey, what are you talking about? It doesn't work.
As I say, no. Epic fail. It's never.
I don't care who you are.
We are all married. We know better.
When you're getting corrected one more time, that logic does not prevail.
No.
Yeah.
Been married.
You never win.
I know that.
Never win that one.
You know the old one, behind every great man is a woman standing behind him shaking her head.
I've heard that. I think there's a sign somewhere probably in my house.
I can't claim credit for that one, but it certainly fits.
For sure.
In general, not my wife in particular, just in general. I mean,
yeah.
A friend of mine asked me to say that.
Oh, okay. All right. So we'll put that as the asterisk disclaimer.
Right. There you go.
Nice save.
So, doing a little research for this tonight, I noticed that you have just entered the podcast world not long ago.
Yeah, it's fun to talk to some of my friends all my friends that have talked, but it's like trying to crack another world, just like this thing with the book. It was difficult getting into being a promoter years and years ago, just like it would be hard today to get into that. But starting any new kind of a business is difficult. Even when you have the ability to do things that other people can't do the way you can. I mean, it just you can open up a can of worms for yourself anytime you want in this business and start something else. And they're all hard, and the old saying goes, anything worth having is worth working hard for. And, it just doesn't come to you because you think it's a good idea, as I mean, you guys have been doing this for a while.
Yeah. And it took us a little while to get things off the ground. So we messed around with it for a year before we got our first episode off.
Wow.
And then, kind of a last minute, want to do a show? Sure. So we got on one Sunday afternoon and said, let's give it a shot. And that was show one. And we're 266 from there.
So what do you do them every week?
Yeah. Well,
Try
pretty
to.
much. We take a couple of weeks off a year. But for the most part, it's every week.
The intention is that we have a weekly episode.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool.
So we're really here to talk to you about your new book. So
Yeah.
All Access, which is I've read most of it anyway. I've read it, but back in March, and Dennis has been looking at it, and there is some cool shit in there, dude. You have done some awesome things, and yeah, I had to write at work the other day. I had to write down, if you weren't in this job, what would you want to do? And I wrote down, I'd like to be a concert promoter. So that's what I wrote down. That was what I thought a long time ago. Actually, I almost moved to Nashville, and that was part of the reason I wanted to move to Nashville back in.
A lot of people would I mean, I guess everybody thinks about being something else, or when you get asked, especially, like, what do you think? What would you do? I don't know. I don't know what I would do. Because I never really had to think about it for 3 or 4 years at the very beginning, prior to me doing my first show in '74. I kind of felt like I did my college education, really between say 73 and 77. After I got out of high school in '72, I actually started getting some hands-on experience. So for 4 or 5 years, I wasn't messing around. I was just trying to get involved, trying to get noticed, trying to get included, trying to get employed, trying to eat, trying to get a paycheck, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of people, even 50 years ago, that wanted in this business, even though this business wasn't what it is now. Essentially, it was the same thing, only Jefferson Airplane was still a fairly new group by comparison, or any of them. I mean, think about all the groups that have come and gone since the late 60s, early 70s, when, in my case, when I got started, and most of those, I mean, Jimi Hendrix was only gone 6 or 7 years. So was Morrison was only gone a few years when I started doing this. So I mean, the times were completely different. I mean, it's easy to talk about these guys 40, 50 years on down the line, and they're legends now, but they weren't legends in 1970. They were just other rock stars. And obviously, a favorite of many of these groups that we're talking about, or who I wrote about in the book. And it's incredible, that we're still here talking about it, and that it's still a formidable and valuable business for a lot of people, and a lot of people now out there in audience world, really go show up for a lot of different shows. But back in the day, it was more of a cult thing. People went to concerts, but not like they do today. I mean, now it's almost a status thing, like going to Wimbledon. Or some high profile event. I mean, you go to an Eagles show, you're going to drop some money on some tickets and that dinner and whatever else you do, wine and parking and swag. I mean, think about it. Go to an Eagles show, it's $1,000.
Oh yeah, easily.
By the time you're done, if you got good seats, even if you got crummy seats. And I'm not picking on the Eagles. I'm just saying in general for superstar bands. It's quite an investment to go, but shit, fortunately, it seems like people have been doing the right stuff, and they're gathering their money and their free time together, and they're showing up at these shows. I mean, they will be soon enough. Shows are starting to happen all over the place now, and as time goes on, the bigger ones will be coming out, because it just took them a little longer to put their tours together. So.
Yeah, to that point, I was just looking at Bryan Adams. The only dates that he's doing this year in the States is in Vegas in the fall, in November. He's got 6 dates that he's doing, and I looked at tickets for that. I think there were tickets in the 8th row, 9th row, something like that. They were $650 a ticket.
Wow.
And in the upper deck of it's a theater at the Wynn. So at the upper deck, they were $187. So it's
were you looking at the real site?
Yeah, I was looking at the Wynn site. Yeah.
Wow.
Ticketmaster site. Yeah. Yeah. Because I went on, I got scooted to the Vivid Seat site first, which was
right. Well,
off the rails.
Adams is great and everything. I don't understand those ticket prices.
Yeah. I think it's because people haven't gotten out, and those are some of the first shows they're booking. And I guess, I don't know.
I think it's more, I think it's more than that. I think it's just what people are seeing other people charging, and they're following the leader. Because I'll tell you what, we're back on sale with shows. We've never gone off sale with most of our shows, but everybody's really just waiting around to see if they're going to happen. And it seems like now they will be happening. So people are starting to show some confidence in that. But I haven't seen, I mean, other than the usual bands that always draw well and they can charge whatever they want, well, that's what they do. But an act like Adams, which to me is in between, right? I mean, he's definitely a big name, great star and all that, but he hasn't really been in the news too much in the last decade or two. Mm-hmm. So it kind of blows my mind to hear those ticket prices.
Yeah, it was, I didn't expect that, because I saw him probably, I don't know, 7 years ago at an amphitheater in St. Augustine, Florida. Yeah, the Reckless tour. Well, he did the Reckless tour. It was the Reckless 40th anniversary or whatever it was. And it was a great show, but we didn't pay anywhere close to that for those tickets.
I wonder if this is this all of Vegas? These shows coming to Vegas are they trying to coup some of the money that they've lost, over the last year?
That's what I
Is
wonder.
it the venue? Is it the venues themselves that are saying, you know what, we're going
to? Because you see, when you're charging that kind of money for the tickets, that's for the artist. I mean, the biggest reason that tickets have skyrocketed so much is because of the third tier ticketing that's out there. I mean, some is done by Ticketmaster or promoters themselves. I mean, they're, they go, well, scalpers are going to take our tickets. We price them normal, like what we would consider reasonable and sane. Well, somebody else is going to take them and just, take those best seats down in front, and they're going to charge $500 or $1,000 for them. And there's people who will not get in line on the computer. It's not even getting in line in person anymore. But there's a lot of people that just won't be bothered with 10 o'clock on Friday morning buying tickets, but they'll call a scalper up and they'll pay $500 without blinking for the great seats because they didn't have to go through the turmoil to get them. And they'd rather do that than do what normal people do. And that's how the tickets get blown up so high. I mean, the group sees some scalper getting $500 or $1,000 a ticket. They're going, why aren't we doing that if they'll pay for it? Well, the thing is those same people that pay those exorbitant prices will not get on the internet and buy tickets that way. They just won't. So what'll happen is the scalper will take those $500 tickets and still charge more for them.
Yeah.
So you can't get around it, and it's just a leeching kind of a business, in that regard, and it affects all everybody, us and ticket buyers, everybody. Because I mean, I don't want to even try to be reasonable with ticket prices because somebody's going to jerk them up. So it's like, okay, why don't we get it? And then you look like a jerk saying, "Give me $250." What are you doing? It's not me.
Yeah.
Because what happens after I pay my bills, the bands get the greatest percentage of the money. So, in my mind, it's like I should stop giving guarantees out to groups because they're going to do their VIP deals and they're going to do this and that and the other thing that I don't participate in, but I got to pay them a guarantee to do a show. And then they're going to take my investment and make more for themselves and not share it. It's really, in some respects with some bands, it's become very hard. There's a lot of other bands though that share, so I don't argue about them. I mean, if they want to suffer the abuse from the fans, then
Right.
So be it. But I mean, anytime I explain it like that to people, they completely get it, but they don't understand it coming out of the box necessarily. You know what I'm saying?
I think you're just, well, at least I think the general public doesn't understand that process. You're reading the book and you were talking about in the I can't remember what chapter it was. You talked about ticket prices and you talked about that the artists set the ticket prices.
Yeah.
And now I have always thought that Live Nation or Ticketmaster, whoever the promoter is, set the ticket price based on what they negotiated with the artist. But
well, see, there's a guarantee for these groups whenever they perform. They don't take a percentage of the door. They get as large of a guarantee as they can possibly get, or their representative can get for them. And then they want to add on all this other stuff, and they're not out there for their health. They're out there to make as much money as they can, because how long is their stardom going to shine? How long are they going to be able to perform at this level and be able to tour and travel the way they do? It's a ball buster, man, what these people do. I mean, it's like going to war, and it's not an easy job, for that 90 minutes or 2 hours or whatever that guy plays on stage, and he makes you feel good and you're happy you went. I mean, the hell these guys got to go through to perform is absolutely crazy. So I don't begrudge them anything they can get, because of there's so many bands out there that I don't necessarily work with, that I don't really care about because they're not working with me. And on the musical fandom type scale, I go, wow, they get that much out of their fans. Why do they do that? And they, you can get crummy seats in the balcony or in the back of the place for a normal price. And even those have gotten high,
Yeah,
because they're comparing them to what happens down front. It's really, It's a tough thing, but I mean, it's like this everywhere. I was in the airport in Chicago yesterday, and there's one bar is open at O'Hare at Terminal 5, which is the international terminal, and also that's where Southwest is at O'Hare now. And there's one bar, and they had tons of canceled flights. Southwest had a problem over the last couple of days. So I couldn't get a drink at a bar, but there was one of those stands that's right there, and you could buy a beer. So I bought a couple of beers and a couple of wines for the plane ride, and $47 for 2 beers and 2 little tiny bottles.
Wow.
I mean, I was paying $12 a beer. You can get a 24 pack of Bud Light for $19.
Yeah.
So the airport's scalping beer.
Yeah.
It's just remarkable.
And the thing is, because you have no other option. I mean, you have no, and that's the same way with like the venues. These concert venues. You buy those expensive beers. You wouldn't buy a beer like that anyplace else, but you want one that night, and you're gonna drink one.
It's the same thing in a lot of the nicer bars that you go to in hotels or restaurants. I mean, these people are not shy. I mean, $15, $20 for a cocktail is normal anymore.
Oh yeah, for cocktail especially.
I mean, I don't frequent a lot of them and haven't recently, but when I do, I see it, and I'm constantly blown away. I always have to say to the bartender, "Did I just buy a bottle?"
I better be drunk after this.
And he said, "Well, yes, you did. Thank you. And here's your drink."
Do I get to meet that girl over there with it for that? Did this pay for the intro?
Is this a meet and greet or what? Well, that's the other thing with artists too. To your point about making all the money. That banner back there. Those guys have done a ridiculous job of charging people a crazy amount of money for a meet and greet or for, and people pay it. We talk about this all the time.
What? Like I said, I'm not picking on anybody about it. If they can get it, good for them. If they're and the bottom line is what comes down to is the fans have more money than things to do with that money. And so this is the thing they like to do with their money, and good for them. They work hard. And if that's what your hobby is going to a KISS show, then by all means, give Gene and Paul all your money.
Yeah.
It's kind of like church if you think about it.
It is a religion, that's for sure. That's a fact.
That's great. So, Danny, how long did it take you to write this book?
How old am I? 66 years.
So it's been a work in progress for forever then.
I found an email recently that I had sent. I don't remember who I sent it to, but it had, what I did was, as I did like kind of an outline years and years ago about stuff that I wanted to talk about. Because, like when you get lucky enough to have special experiences wherever you have them, you end up repeating those stories to people over and over and over again. You get pretty good at telling those stories. So I sat down and over a period of time, and I wrote down just a sentence that would trigger any story I wanted. And I had 32 of those chapters written 10 years ago. Wow. In my head. And then what finally got me off the dime was I was watching Shark Tank one night, and Bill Walton came on. They're the basketball player, came on with some friend of his, and they were shilling some product. And the next guy up after him was this guy who was called the Ghostwriter. So I called him up and made a deal with him. And I fulfilled my end of the bargain. He didn't. And we don't speak anymore, but he did get me off my butt to get this going. And basically all he did was he interviewed me about stuff, and he was a very good interviewer. He interviewed me over the phone, and we recorded it, and then it got translated into type, and then we shot it back and forth until I was happy with it. But that didn't happen till I think it was 16 or 17. And then then he sold the company and me with it, and I had to talk to new people who I never got along with as well. And it's a long story, but to make it shorter, we ended up finishing the book up last spring, and we found a guy here in town, the guy that actually prints flyers and posters for us. He got more than he bargained for, and he volunteered to print the book, and we did this cover, and I mean, it's all organic. It's all from within. There's no publisher involved. There's no outside company involved. So we had to learn how to do the book business, and it's not been easy. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I got the book out. I think the book is fantastic, but I'm biased. But if I was looking at this and somebody else's face was in there instead of mine, I'd be jealous. I would definitely be envious.
I don't read very many books. I'm not a reader. I
Most
just don't.
people don't, but if you're going to read a book, you read this one.
But I only read autobiographies. So
Yeah, I
when
like
this book
them too.
came across, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to read that. And I read it sitting at the beach in Siesta Key, Florida.
Nice.
Bright freaking sun as it is on my damn phone. So it was really hard to read. But it was cool. I mean, it definitely was a book. I could hear you talking through the book. Yeah.
You read it on the phone?
Yeah, I read it on my phone, through my phone.
You haven't seen the book?
I have seen the book. I've seen hard copy. I just don't have a hard copy of it yet.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I like how much it weighs, and
yeah, I'm gonna get it.
I like that. One of the things that I struggled with for probably a year was not only getting the pictures together that are in there, but doing it the way that I did it, which is with the pictures as part of the story rather than having photo sections.
Right.
I hate reading any kind of a book about somebody who's dropping names or using names or naming people, and then you got to go from a photo section back to that paragraph to remember who that was.
Right.
As opposed to like that's just one flow of reading, and you can read that book in a day if you want to, or 2 days.
Yeah.
Easily, or on a long plane ride, you can do some serious damage to it because there are a lot of pictures in there. And what I had the most fun doing was writing the captions under the pictures. That was I would get a drink of my favorite choice and start writing wisecracks about the pictures, and I thought that was fun. I had a great time doing it.
Yeah, I read it on my iPad. Same deal.
It was very personable. I mean, I thought, yeah, I enjoyed reading it.
Well, like you said, I mean, my idea for doing this was when we were shooting back and forth the different versions of it, he was interjecting some of his own words that I would never use. And I told him, that's not what I want. I want to sound like I'm talking. And I happen to like the patter and the cadence of which I talk about these kind of things. If I'm listening to somebody else, I listen to them. But in this case, I didn't want to have somebody making up words that I'd never use and say them like I was saying them. So that took a while because we had to get over that. So it takes, I would say it took over 4 years from the time I really got serious about doing it.
That's cool. It turned out really nice. Like I said, I'm like you. I like the fact that, you're not going around, you go to the center section or toward the end and, picture 6B or whatever. And you're like, oh yeah, that's that, because, and it breaks it up. I'm like Bill, I don't read fiction or anything like that. I can't get, one of them Stephen King books that thick. I don't do that. But I'm like him. I do a lot of the rock and roll autobiographies and stuff. So stuff like this, actual true stories. That's my thing. But like I said, to put that picture right next to it, and it flows. It flows really well, and you can, like I said, go through this pretty quick.
Well, I didn't want to wait for go through the process of getting signed by a publisher or anything like that. I still would like to get one because what would be really nice would be for this to end up in some bookstores, like especially the airport bookstores. I see this in airport bookstores because if I need a book to read on a long flight, and if I see All EXCE Occupation Concert Promoter, that's what I'm going to buy. I mean, it should be next to Obama's book because it's not as long and it's a lot cheaper and it's more fun.
I'm just going to let that go. There's a lot of stuff going on in here.
Yeah, I know. I mean, my point is that, I mean, I was just in a bunch of airports and I'm going, God, I wish my book was in there for people to see. Because you see people that are looking specifically for something for that flight. And if you see that cover with those words on it, you're going to give it a good shot at buying it, I think. Because you're in that forced situation like we were talking about with the beer. I need something to read, and I don't want to, read something stupid. So anyway, like the newspaper.
It's just depressing, right? It's just depressing. there's,
Tough.
And it's all fiction. so
Depends on which one you're reading.
that's true.
Exactly. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about how you got hooked up with Bill Graham? I mean, how did that whole thing go down?
Well, as a kid growing up, the only connection I had with him was seeing him in Rolling Stone, and then hearing about the Fillmores, and the whole San Francisco scene. I mean, there was barely anything that you could read in any of the old Creams or Crawdaddies or Rolling Stones, anything that happened about San Francisco, which was this mythical place by the Bay. I mean, I'm from Chicago. I've never traveled. I've never been anywhere. I've never been to California. And Bill was the guy. I mean, he made a lot of news. He got great coverage he basically there was already a concert business per se out there from Elvis and Frank and all the big Beatles, but there was never that I was aware of. There was people that toured, but it was usually the older, my parents kind of acts. And then in the mid to late 60s, these clubs started popping up, and places for groups to play. And I wasn't aware of how they routed things, from state to state and all that. And, but we had a place in Chicago, as Park Ridge, actually, called the Deep End. And it was a pizza bar. You had to have a high school ID to get in. And groups like Chicago and REO and Styx, great Chicago bands, they would play there. And it was like 50 cents. I mean, I don't know how they got paid, but this is how they all got their chops. And then they moved up to another place called The Cellar, which hosted some groups like Led Zeppelin and Cream. And then there was the Kinetic Playground. So, it took a while for a concert industry to begin and to be serviced. And it wasn't until the 70s when guys like me started popping up. But there was guys around the country older than me, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, where I'm from. And I thought, God, I'm never going to get started in Chicago. So in 72, during my senior year, I went to Arizona for my spring break. And on the way there, I flew to San Francisco and got to see what was going on there. Didn't go to any shows, but I got down here and I loved it down here. And I decided I wanted to move back this way. And I moved to Berkeley in July after I graduated. And I walked on and got a little bit of work out of Bill Graham's people. And I met him and I loved him right away. He was just amazing. And one thing led to another. And over the next almost 20 years, we did shows together as partners. I never worked for him. I tried, but he wouldn't hire me when I wanted a job. And somehow I managed to get doing what he was doing, although not as in a celebratory fashion or as big or as charming. But, sooner or later, I got to the point where I could get on the phone with him and talk business and shop and actually partner things with him. And we got on fantastic. I really considered him a great friend, and he's a big inspiration to me for my whole life.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, you think about people that you always wonder what they were like or what they'd be like to work with or work for or whatever. And it's just, that's one of those kind of people you just look at and you kind of go, wow, that guy had it together.
By and large, the people, the hands-on people in the business, the musicians, the guys that run the shows, the artists, the agents, the managers, most of them are really cool people. The people you end up having the biggest problem with is the business side of it. And I get along with most everybody really well, but the only things that I can look back on and say, there's been definite misunderstandings over the years. What happens with a lot of acts, and I don't have a lot of problems, but they rarely come up. But it's like if they get sick and they have to cancel, they don't want to talk to you about paying any help with your bills for what you incurred to put the show on. I've had people cancel on me on the day of the show.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, it's not your fault you got sick, but it's your responsibility to show up and play. And if you can't do it, then we have a financial situation that we've got to address. And especially around the last couple of years, it's nobody's fault, but we had a lot of shows in the books that we've been forced to move around like a Ouija board, for the last year and a half. And it seems like the dates are finally settling in, and I hope everything stays as it is and gets even better as you see ballparks opening and arenas opening, and basketball teams and hockey teams are letting more people in. It seems like the worst is over, I would think, but getting everybody back into concert shape and with the stamina to go through all the shows that have been postponed, and now they're all upon us. And then there's these other groups that didn't have shows that are trying to wedge their way in there and work as well. And, the problem is you only got so many days in the week you can go out. You only have so much money you can spend on shows.
And everybody's going to want to play.
the next year is going to be very interesting.
It's going to be very crowded out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
I think within a couple months, you're not going to be hearing people whining, saying, I want a show.
I'd be like, I can't pick which show I want to go.
Yeah, I have a couple. I have a couple shows already, so that I bought tickets for or are working on it. So yeah, I completely understand that. To your point about the, promoter or venue or whatever getting stuck when somebody is sick. My son, I'm in Indianapolis area and works for Conseco Fieldhouse. Worked for Conseco Fieldhouse for a little while. And did an internship, and there was an artist there that had rescheduled a show 4 times. And the 5th time he was supposed to do the show, everything was set up, the stage was set up, they had sent all of the people home and everything, and he canceled about 2 hours before the show and left. And they were left they had to call all their union people back on overtime, and the venue's the one got stuck with the bill. Those are the kind of things I don't think we know about. We don't know about that stuff. So when we get pissed off about things or about costs and stuff, sometimes it's because that kind of stuff happens and you guys all get screwed, and then you have to pay for that stuff somewhere. Yeah. It's kind of wacky.
It can be very difficult, without question.
Interesting.
So, I know the promoters work in certain regions or certain states. How do they go about figuring out who's going to work where? Are there any unwritten rules to how that goes?
Well, there used to be. Prior to the end of the 90s, everybody pretty much stayed in their own lanes. My way of doing things was if I ever had the opportunity to do a show in a place outside of my normal place, which would have been Vegas, Phoenix, Tucson, Albuquerque, those were my main places. If somebody offered me a show outside of there, I would call up the promoter in that area that I knew, and I would say, hey, what do you think of this? Do you want to split the state? Let's work together on it. Most of the time they'll say yes, and sometimes they say no because they're pissed at you for getting the show, or they just don't want to do it because they don't think it's the right show to do. And you can do it yourself, or you can pass on doing the show. Nowadays, though, with AEG and Live Nation, they'll put in, like you'll change your socks or your underwear. They'll put an offer in for 50 cities at once, and people like me are just completely run over by that method, and they're that big. I mean, they have one of the greatest monopolies in the world between being Ticketmaster and Live Nation. And AEG and their ticketing stuff. I mean, they can do things that normal people can't do. And that's the way our society is. It might not be fair, but it's legal, I guess. So good for them. And, congratulations on taking over the world. But it poses a lot of problems for people like me. When you can't get the groups that you want to put on, or groups that you've been successful with in the past. And now they're so big that they've got the attention of the big guys, and the big guys make these big offers. And the next thing you know, you're out on the other side of the door. My rule has always been, I don't like to go poaching. Like if I have a good act that is friendly with me and trusts me and likes me and wants to work with me as much as possible. That's what I still do to this day, is I'll ask her if I know of somebody that promotes there. I'll ask them if they're interested. And I think that's the fair way to be. Bottom line is I'm only one guy and I've got a small staff. I don't want to take on more than I can deal with. And it's great to have a knowledgeable partner on the ground in any given city that you're in. There kind of are unwritten rules, but a lot of those lines have been blurred by the fact that one or two companies probably take care of 80 or 90% of the business, especially of the bigger shows, and anyway, it just goes on and on.
Do you think do you think because of those two monopolies, you think the fans get screwed out of that deal too? With prices and just locations of shows and stuff like that?
What locations?
Well, I mean, they don't always go to all the markets. So some of those just, they're regional and they may not hit every market. And is that a band's option or is that the promotion?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the band's option because if somebody says, hey, let's do a 50 show tour, and they go, well, I don't want to be out that long. So you got to fit it in between the time period that they want to work, and there could be reasons for why they want to work at a certain time. A lot of artists, work around their kids' schedules. A lot of artists will only go out on weekends, which I never understood that one, because if you're worried about your kids, the very days that you can actually hang out with them, you're working. And then you're around while they're at school.
Maybe they don't want to be with their kids on the weekend.
I wasn't going to say that. Garth Brooks did that. He quit for 10 years or whatever. He came back bigger than ever, but he left as big as ever, so he can do that. But he's rare.
Yeah.
I heard he did 71,000 tickets somewhere in one day the other day. I mean, it's just unbelievable how strong he is. And he promotes his own shows, or he has somebody that does it in-house for him. Why does he need a promoter? But I certainly would love to do shows with him. My wife idolizes him, but I don't care for him because I never got to work with him. And it's just business. But I would rather spend my time listening to people that like me enough to work with me.
That makes sense.
Fair.
Fair enough.
Because there's only so much time in a day, and I can't be a fanboy anymore for people that I don't work with, because that happens to be my business, so that's just the way it is. I mean, I appreciate how big some people are, and good for them, but good for you. Go ahead and go have a blast in your stadium, Garth.
So I have another question about the book too. So you in there, you talk about John Mellencamp.
Yeah.
And John
Your boy
is
from Indiana there.
Yeah, he's actually about 20 miles south of here is where he was born.
I've actually had to deal with him, and I read that chapter too just to see if I was correct. He's a dick.
Sorry. Well, he's the one that refers to himself as the little bastard. He knows.
Oh, yeah.
He knows who he is. Look, bottom line, from my standpoint, I'm not trying to back off of anything. I didn't call him any names or anything, but
right.
And everybody is capable of being a dick at one time or another. I don't care who you are, and you never know. I never know from show to show what's transpired at the date last night or the night before that. What's happening could be problems with the crew, could be problems at home, and you're stuck on the road. You can't deal with. There's so many things that can come up in our day-to-day life when we're sitting at home, much less somebody who's on the road. Right. And you just, sometimes you catch people at the wrong time.
And that could have been.
I as far as the Johnny Cougar story went, I had a great time with him the night before, and the next day it looked like it was going to be great. And when he got there and the lights went off, it just struck him as odd. And you know what? I guess if I was an artist, I might not have liked doing where I was playing there either. I mean, it was odd because the stage wasn't even a complete stage. There was a little lip over here and it went up a couple inches. It was very unconventional. It was an old church and the stage was in place of where the altar was,
Right.
and which is fitting, I think. And I sold not even 300 tickets out of 400 tickets at less than $2. It didn't even sell out. And to me, the thing is, yeah, you're right. The conditions aren't ideal. You don't like the system here. But the thing is, you can't even sell out 400 tickets. So why are you complaining about production qualities when this was the best I could do? And your manager and your agent, accepted this offer. They called me up and said, you don't have to pay him very much because we want to do a radio station ticket price. So it was $1.92 to get in. So I couldn't sell out 400 tickets for $1.92. And this guy, this new first album act, is yelling at me in front of an audience saying, get your money back from this prick, because I didn't give him the proper stage and sound and lights that he wanted.
Right.
Well, and that's, I wrote a letter back, and it was kind of snarky. I was going to publish the letter, and I said, nah, I'm not going to do that. But the letter said, when you're able to draw more people, where I can put you in a proper hall with proper sound and lights, I'll be the first one to raise my hand and do it. But in the meantime, how about a little respect for the fact that I bought you at a loss just to help you break the market? And then that's what you did to me. So right. I did send that letter, and I never really, they never called back or apologized or anything, but I did get more dates in the future as his career got stronger. So I think people sometimes step away from confrontations that maybe they should take on, because if somebody gets so mad at you when you confront them about being, weird with you, then maybe you don't want to work with them in the future. In his case, I confronted his people about it, and they said, yeah, you're right, but that's the way he is. Yeah. He wants things a certain way. He's a perfectionist. I say, I get it, but perfection costs money. And I'm not willing to put him on in a big place so he can feel good about his performance with 200 people in the audience in a 2,000 seater, Right. So anyway, most people get that. And he's an uncompromising guy. That's the nicest way I can put it.
Now, he was, like I said, this was a corporate gig that I worked for Toyota, and they had hired him to come down to play this gig. And I met his band, and I think his band was really cool. Yeah. No question. But he was just, and he wasn't really, he was just not very polite. He was just standoffish, very standoffish, just kind of I don't know. I think he's a real shy guy and doesn't really care for all that attention that the fame brings. Maybe he's in the wrong business for being popular. Exactly. If that's the case, right. I haven't spent a lot of time with him or around him in all the years, and I haven't done any shows with him in a while. But I always appreciated how great he was, and I truly believe the thing. Good musician. Yeah. I really believe that when people are given the great gifts of talent, that sometimes it pulls away from common sense and other things like that. How do you deal with yourself when you're that good? Yeah. Nobody gives you a roadmap. Nobody tells you which way to go, and all of a sudden you're a nobody who suddenly has his album cover in every record store in the country. And now you're on tour and you're seeing yourself there. And it's got to turn your head. Some people handle it better than others. That is true. So anyway, yeah, that was, for me, that was funny. And see, that was one of those stories that just kind of kept popping up over the years, so I never forgot it. There's a lot of stories that people come back to me and tell me about that I was involved with, and I don't remember anything about it, because in 40 something years time, in 12,000 shows, you're going to forget a few things. And I, believe me, I do. I don't even remember what I had for lunch today. I didn't have lunch. Okay, I remember that.
Well, speaking of stories, are there any stories that you left out of the book?
Oh, tons. Are you kidding?
12,000 shows. Well, there might have been one or two.
Follow-up question. Is there going to be another book?
I could have, instead of making it a 350-page book with over 600 pictures, I could have gone 180 pages and done less pictures and made it a lot easier to handle. But I just figured, man, I don't know that I'd ever do this again, but if I'm doing it once, I want to do it right. And the one thing I made a point of not doing, I didn't want to be, because I was holding the pen, just like the singer holds the microphone. I didn't want to come down on people and grind any axes that maybe, you know, if somebody did something or didn't like something. Doing a book that's basically a story of your career or your life, or to a certain degree, shouldn't include, you know, bitching about people and things. And
Most of your stories were positive, and I like that part about it.
And also, yeah, and also I didn't want to tell stories out of school when people are together and it's the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and you're getting together after the show and you're acting up. I mean, they're talk about unwritten rules. You don't talk about stuff that happens backstage or after shows, you know, or in the hotels. I mean,
or under the stage.
You know, it's like there's no reason to drop somebody's name with a story about something outrageous that happened, not thinking about how that might affect that person should it ever get back to them. You know what I mean? So
you want to keep working too. You don't want to be known as that guy.
No, yes, you just, you know, when it comes to that kind of stuff, I mean, there's a number of people that I wrote stories about that I would have loved to have left in there, that everybody would have felt justified about me leaving in there. But I thought, you know what, this is going to appear to be sour grapes to that person, even though I might not like them anymore. We may not talk anymore. That's no reason for me to use this as a weapon. And I wanted the book to be enjoyable.
Much respect for that, man.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
Some people bitch at me for not telling more juicy stuff, but you know, you want that, go get a People magazine.
Yeah.
You know,
watch TMZ. Go watch TMZ.
Go on TMZ. Go turn on the Housewives of Tucson.
Oh God, my wife watches that shit. Oh.
Yeah, I hate those things.
I do too. But anyway, no, it was a real. I said I've looked through most of it. I've still got a few more pages to read, but I mean, it's been a good read. I got it late, so that's why I've been but I've been on it hard for the last few days and got through most of it. So
cool.
I like it though. I like it a lot.
Well, I haven't been to Indiana since I did John Prine there a couple times back in the 80s.
Yeah.
I think Murat.
Murat.
Oh, Murat.
Yeah.
That's Murat. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been so long I can't remember how to pronounce it.
Yeah, that's a neat venue. It's an old shrine and
yeah,
I've been there.
Really cool venue. Been there a couple times.
Yeah, we've threatened to go in there with some other shows, but haven't gotten around to it. I mean, you know, I've got these acts a number of acts that I work with, and I can go pretty much anywhere with them. And I just say, where haven't you been in a while? Where do you need a promoter? And I can decide whether or not I want to try doing it. What's the reason why? What's the reason why we didn't do that show? You know, sometime in the past, and that's what it's always about. It's about not poaching, not taking stuff from other people, and generally it works. I find also that I like going to different cities that I haven't been to before with people, if the situation works out. So that's always fun.
Cool. Well, I got a couple more questions. We don't want to keep you too long, but is there anybody that you have really, really, really enjoyed working with over the years?
Most everybody. Not anyone that really sticks out. It's been pretty good. I mean, like these people who I do multiple dates with, typically they're the ones that I get on with the best. Jackson Brown, Bonnie Raitt, John Prine. I did more shows with him than anybody. I work with Gordon Lightfoot and Frankie Valli and Alan Parsons and George Lopez, and you know, there's a great list of quality and super people, performers that I really enjoy spending my time with and making money with. And typically we make money together. So it's a really nice way for a friendship to continue to grow and blossom, and stories to tell and lies to tell and all the rest of that. I still enjoy that part of it. I love the shows. I love being at the shows. I love them when they're successful. I usually love them even when they're not. I haven't had that many unsuccessful shows. I've been very fortunate that way to just say no when it's time to say no. But we're entering a whole new chapter now with coming back from this layoff for so long, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it turns out. I mean, I'm betting the house, and I hope I don't lose it. Not funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, no good.
So is an unsuccessful show then a non-money producing show, or is it due to other things that happen?
Well, very simple. I mean, if you need 2,000 people to break even and you do 1,500 people,
okay,
you're short 500 people times $50.
Yeah.
Whatever the average ticket price is. So yeah, that's an unsuccessful show. I wouldn't call, like, if I didn't like the show and it still did well, I wouldn't call it unsuccessful. There's a lot of, there used to be more than I do now, but there's been shows over the years that it wouldn't occur to me to book that show, but I did because somebody either talked me into it or pointed out that you're going to make money on it, even though you don't know it or you don't like it. Those are the ones that I get worried about the most. I like being in control of what I'm doing. And part of being in control as a promoter is understanding who you're selling and who the audience is on what day of the week with what ticket price and what hall and how you go on sale and how you announce it and all the rest. I mean, those are all the things for every single show that swims around my head when I'm booking it and after I've booked it. There's a lot of times you chase a show and and a lot of times when you chase shows, meaning by chasing mean like somebody else has a bigger offer and you go, okay, I'm going to bid higher. Anytime you get into that, you're usually going to lose because your gut level, my gut level on shows is I think I know pretty much what ticket price an audience is willing to pay and where they want to see it and what night of the week is the best for it. I mean, it's usually a weekend, but there's only 2 weekend dates in a week. So you're going to end up with Mondays and Tuesdays sometime. And that act has to be that popular to overcome playing on any night of the week that they choose or that their routing dictates. So yeah. I mean, it's details, a lot of details. It's not just about what happens when that guy gets on stage. That's for the audience. The audience paid their dues by buying a ticket to get in. They should come in unmolested. They should have happy, smiling faces. They should be shown to their seat. There should be a bar with drinks and ice and whatever they want that should be there. And there should be a parking spot that's safe for them. And they should get a great show and go home and tell the world about it. And that's what they buy a ticket for. They don't buy a ticket to have a lot of things go wrong and then have to bitch about it and critique it and all the rest of that. And then, and scream about it on Facebook the next day. So, we do our most and our best to make sure any show that anybody comes to, they're going to have a good time. That's the bottom line.
Cool.
Well, that sounds like a great ending to this segment. I mean, that was perfect, man.
It's all wrapped up in a whole little package.
It's like you've done this before.
Boy, and I would like to continue, and I will. I mean, I'm going to be around for a while, that's for sure, and I'm really looking forward to shows coming back and everybody just getting back into that groove where I mean, shows have become such a big part of so many people's lives over the last 5 decades. Living without them, I know, is a real hardship for the last X amount of months. Now they're back and people will loosen up and we'll go have some fun and Bob's your uncle.
I like I said, I think it's going to work out good. Like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how quick it comes back. But I think once it does, it's going to be full force. Then, like I said, you're going to have so many shows to go see. You won't know what to do. You won't have any money.
I've got some days coming up where I find 2 or 3 shows. Well, all 2 or 3 of those acts are expect me to be at their show.
Right.
And I feel terrible when I'm not at a show. I mean, when somebody shows up and it's like, well, where's Danny? Well, he had another show tonight. Well, I showed up. Why didn't he? I don't hear that because I always show up. I very rarely have been ever called out on not showing up. I remember one time I didn't go to an Amy Grant show, and I love Amy Grant because I had Ringo that night, and she goes, "You're lucky it was a Beatle."
Yeah, I mean, come on.
That's pretty good.
I got some slack for a Ringo show.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. Awesome.
That's cool.
All righty.
Well, thank you, Danny. We really appreciate you being on here. So it's been great. I think we've all wanted to talk to a promoter before and And the book's great. I mean, you got to get the book, All Access by Danny Zelisko. You got to get it.
And by the way, it's not, you have to go to eplive.com to buy it. Do Amazon. They have a book that they'll do a print on demand, and they also have, but the book that we have is the original landscape size book, meaning it's longer than it is tall. Most books are portrait size. I went the other way because I wanted bigger pictures and get more print on the page.
Cool.
And so that's why I did that way. That was another thing that took me a while to figure out. And finally, like I said, I said, this is what I'm doing. And it worked, and we sold some books. People like it. And thanks for having me on. Let's move some more product.
Sounds
Exactly.
good.
I don't like calling it a product. Let's move some more books.
There you go. All right, hang tight.
If you guys end up with a slow news day and you need a show to come on again, let me know. I'll be happy to do it again. Nice
Awesome.
talking to you guys.
Cool,
We'd
man.
love to.
All right, hang tight for a minute as I take us out of here. Folks, visit us on agesofrock.com. Check out past episodes and social media links. And until next time, peace out. Thanks for listening to the Ages of Rock podcast. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and most importantly, tell all your friends. Remember, you're never too old to rock. Until the next episode, peace out, folks.